بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمد ونصلي على رسول الكريم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah, we praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ask him to send peace and blessings on his beloved and our beloved Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The first section or chapter is the Ma'ul Bahri Tahurun, that the water of the sea is pure. So Imam Malik Rahimahullah is narrated from Safwan bin Sulaym, he narrated from Sa'id bin Salama, who narrated from the family of Bani Azraq, from Mughira bin Abi Burda, and who from Bani Abdullah, and that was informed that he heard from Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu that he said that a man came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ya Rasulullah, indeed we travel by sea, and we carry with us a very small amount of water, and if we were to make wudu with it, then we'll become thirsty. So should we make wudu with the water of the sea, salt water, because there's something mixed in it, it's not normal sweet water. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, it is pure, huwa tahuru ma'uhu al-hillu maytatu. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, it is pure, its water is pure, and so it is carrion. Mayta is the animal that lives in the sea, fish for example. If it dies without zabah, right, you don't do zabah of fish, you don't slaughter fish. So even if you just grab a fish and you whack it, it dies. Unlike an animal, if you were to hit an animal with something blunt, it wouldn't be halal, it would be mayta. But the mayta of the sea is halal. The question was asked about water, but Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam not just answered the question of water, he answered something else as well. That the food, the animal of the sea, the creature of the sea, that survives in the sea. And then there's a big discussion of what is permissible in that. So the Imams differ. So generally the Hanafis are more strict. Anything except only the fish. Only fish is halal, and some Hanafis have the view that prawns are an exception, because Arabs sort of treated prawns like, in the urf of the Arab, prawns were sort of treated like fish in that sense, but other crustaceans are not, let alone oysters or anything else. But I noticed that the Hanafis that live by the seaside, they seem to be a little bit flexible, and the Hanafis that live in inland, they seem to, Allah alam, to them, because it looks like insects. If people from our area, if they see prawn, it looks like insects to them. So, but those who live in Karachi or in Dhaka, or they live in the port city, they seem to be a little bit lenient. Everything's there in the fish market in Dhaka, to me, what it looks like, and they're all supposed to be, it's 100%, nearly 100% Hanafi there. So I don't know what's going on, what the fatwa is. So but in the other madhahib there is more flexibility with crustaceans, and everything is okay pretty much from the sea. So it's prawns, crabs. This is very hard for people from Port Said. They're not Hanafi. I don't think any of them are Hanafi. They love their sea. Even if they're Hanafi, they eat everything, from what I noticed. But so it's pure. So the question was asked about water, but Rasulullah answered the question of the water, sea water you can make wudu with, because it's not like normal water. There's something in it which is salt, and he gave some extra information. So from this, the ulama take some adab, that when a teacher teaches a lesson, then he gives more benefits, like fawaid, some points of benefit to the student, more than what's in the lesson. If you see, like in madrasas and so forth, yes, the book is there, and the text and hadith and tafsir and so forth being taught, but then there's all these, like especially with very senior ulama, when you study with them, then they give you extra, they from experience, which are not necessarily in the book, and to make it relevant, and they give case studies and so forth on how. So it's actually encouraged that the teacher gives beneficial points that will be for an increase of knowledge of the student, not just teach them what's, like they might have a question, but actually expand their knowledge more than what is they might require at that time. And upon this is the people of knowledge. Imam Shah Waliullah Rahimahullah says, and upon this, alayhi ahlu ilm fi jawaz al-wudu bima al-bahr. Upon this are the people of knowledge that wudu is permissible with seawater, on this hadith. The next section is about ponds. Do not get ponds. So in the old days, you have to understand, people are making wudu from wells, they're making wudu from streams, rivers, sea, as we just read. They're making wudu from, in this desert oasis, there's ponds where water is collected, rainwater is collected in certain places, or from a spring. So water ponds are not spoiled by animals, wild animals, carnivorous animals, creatures that come. And you've probably seen those videos online where they set up a camera next to a small water hole, and how many animals come. Some of them, it's amazing. Like there's like 10 different animals comes at night time to drink from it. So these ponds, these pools of water, you can say. So these pools of water, animals that are like wolves and lions and animals that are not halal, they come and they drink from it and they put their feet in it. Obviously, sometimes they swim in it as well. Even if they're not like the lion or the other animal, they're not very clean. Their feet and so forth are not clean. So there's possibilities, but this doesn't affect the water. It doesn't spoil the water. So Imam Malik is narrated from Yahya bin Sa'id, narrated from Muhammad bin Ibrahim bin Haris al-Taymi, who narrated from Yahya bin Abdul Rahman bin Hatib, that Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu was traveling in a caravan or a group, and they were with Amr ibn As radiallahu anhu until they reached a pond or a pool. And Amr ibn As said to the قال عمرو بن العاص لصاحب الحوض يا صاحب الحوض هل ترد حوضك السباع. He said, do the animals, wild animals, they come drink from your pond? So it must have been on his land or something. And Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu said, يا صاحب الحوض لا تخبرنا. Don't inform us, don't tell us. Because they come and then we come after, and then we come after. We keep in cycle. Human beings are coming to it, animals are coming, human beings. This is irrelevant information. Don't inform us. So sometimes we understand, because Umar radiallahu anhu is a faqih, he's a jurist. If we start splitting hairs, if you start splitting hairs on every minute, make things more difficult, unnecessary. Don't tell us, because it doesn't affect anything. Them coming to drinking, it doesn't affect the water being clean or not. But if you start going into it, like for example, like we mix up sometimes Western things we mix up with Islam. So for example, cross-contamination in food. Is that required for tahara? If the DNA of, say, something najis comes onto our food? For example, in a supermarket, in the deli section, there's haram food at one end, pork. We know that they're selling, and then there's seafood at the other end, right? Hypothetically, it's possible the DNA of one comes onto the other. But generally they keep it separate, they wear different gloves, all that sort of stuff, right? But is it possible that cross-contamination happen if you do a DNA? It's possible. But does that make it najis? That khinzir is najis? There's no sharia requirement for that. I'm not talking about ingredients being put in cooked like pork or alcohol or something being cooked in. That's a different thing. But sometimes we take a definition of like a Western definition and then we project it back into the sharia. One of my teachers, the Mufti, was saying, this is not a requirement for us that we go chase after the DNA of checking at that level. To be that, yes, we have to be particular about halal. We have to check, but not, we overdo it and take a standard that is a health inspector standard and we try to apply it to the sharia or a hukum of sharia, which is tahara. So anyway, as for how much water is a lot, where it becomes negligible, where, if an animal drinks from, what's a large amount of water, small amount of water, ma'un kathir, what's a lot of water, where even if najasa falls in it, the water doesn't change, what's considered a lot of water? What's the threshold? So there's a point he has mentioned, that Imam Shafi Rahimahullah is qullatayn, but qullatayn is like an unknown number. And ulama have come up with estimates based on a pond that they've seen, which is from the Hadith. They looked at it, it's a large earthenware container that takes a very strong man to carry. Now, so the Shafis came up with, in today's measurements, about 216 litres, others came with 190 litres, others came with 300 litres, and so for about 200 or so litres, like a bathtub full of water. Even if urine drop was to fall into it, as long as it doesn't change, the water is still clean, if it's more than that amount. The Hanafi's view is that Imam Muhammad Rahimahullah, I think if I'm correct, he was asked the question, what is a lot of water? So he pointed to a Wudhu pond, as we know in the old mosques, it's still in India, it exists. And other places there's wudu ponds where people may collect wudu from. That's why they make them more than 10 by 10 feet. So that even if something najasa was to fall in, as long as you can't smell, taste, or the water doesn't change, the water is still tahir. So it was based on an estimate or guesstimate or estimate, that educated estimate that Imam Muhammad gave, if I remember correctly. He pointed to the pond of the mosque and he said that much. But if you look at it, if you spread the 216 liters of water, you can spread it in 10 by 10 feet. And so it's almost the same amount, but it's just a different way of looking at it. So, I mean, this is something practically we don't have to worry about, because we just make wudu at a tap and it comes, Yarra Valley sends us the water, purified, alhamdulillah, inshallah. Jawaz al-wudu ma'a nisa, Imam Malik, the permissibility of wudu with women. Malik narrated, and Nafi, he narrated, and Abdullah bin Umar, he used to say, if women and men in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they used to make wudu together. في زمان الرسول يتوضؤون جميعا. I mean, the family, the men and women made wudu in the same place. Now, think about this. There's no bathrooms. Each one is taking a container, or they maybe have a tub and they're making wudu from it together. Like in the hadith you mentioned about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Sayyidina Aisha, they're making ghusl from the same tub. They would take the container and they would make ghusl or wudu from the container together. وَعَلَيْهِ أَكْثُرُ أَهْلِهِمْ. And upon this is a majority ilm, meaning there are ulama that are not in, there's a difference of opinion in this. إِذَا خَلَّتَ الْحَائِدُ وَالْجُنُوبِ بِمَاءٍ هَلْ يَجُوزُ الْغُسْلُ بِذَلِكَ. If a woman that is in a menses and a junub person is for ghusl, if they are alone with the water, can you make wudu with that water? Can you make ghusl? Can you use the water that's used by a lady that's in haid to make a ghusl? Is it clean? So these are things that we don't think about because we have showers. But Imam Malik narrated from Nafi that Abdullah bin Umar, he used to say, there's nothing wrong with the leftover water from a woman, or a person that is in haid, or like she makes ghusl, or a junub person who needs fard ghusl, they make ghusl from the water. And according to this, Imam Shafi'i and Imam Hanifa, that they go by the hadith that water doesn't become junub, doesn't become dirty if it's used properly. The Imam in the Hanbali mazhab, if a lady takes water, she goes in privacy. This is according to the Hanbali mazhab, that if she's alone, she takes the water separate and she makes ghusl with it, you can't use it. Men can't use it. And they have their argument as well. Su'rul hirati tahirun. Imam Malik, the leftover of a cat is pure. The water that he drinks is pure. Imam Malik narrated from Ishaq bin Abdullah bin Abi Talha al-Ansari, who narrated from Hamida or Humayda binti Abi Ubayd bin Farwa, from her auntie Kabsha binti Ka'b bin Malik, and that she was the wife of Ibn Abi Qatada, that she informed her that Abu Qatada entered in the house and she had poured some water for him to make wudu. A cat came to drink from it and he tipped the container over to the cat can drink from it. Until it drank, Kabsha said, he saw me that I was looking at him strangely. I've just poured water for him, probably brought it from the well, and I poured water for him, and for his wudu, and he's letting a cat drink, spoiling the water. Right? So I was looking at it, he said, Ata'jibina ya ibnata akhi, oh the daughter of my brother, as a niece, Ata'jibina, are you astounded by what I'm doing? She said yes. She said Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Innaha laysa bi najasin." It's not dirty, because innama, the cats, innama hiya min at-tawafina alaykum aw tawafat. These cats, they tawaf means to go around, not tawaf as in Kaaba. They do tawaf around you. I mean they go around, intermingle with you. They're move between you in the house. If you have cats, you know what I'm talking about. That they're always walking around you and so forth. They're unavoidable, right? قال مالك لا بأس بي أن ترى فيها النجاسة. And there's nothing إلا أن ترى فيها. There's nothing wrong with the water that they drink from. It's clean as long as there's no najasa in the cat. So let's say it ate something and it bloodied its mouth. There's blood in its mouth, like it ate something, killed the mouse, let's say, and then it's got blood in its mouth. Then it drinks the water. Of course, then the water, there's blood from the mouth that goes into that. It's a different thing. But normally, it's excused. Yahya bin Yahya then explains something. Sorry, Yahya bin Yahya explains about the one of the rawis, Hamida or Humayda, both are correct, and there's some discussion about and said according to majority of the leftover water from a cat is tahir, except that Imam Hanifa rahimahullah consider makruh, disliked. It's not haram, it's not najis, but it's not good. Um, and it's unavoidable. And on this also the ulama have taken animals that are carnivorous, like animals that are hunting, like cheetahs and lions and so forth. They fall under the same hukm as well, according to it mentions here that this also falls. And so it seems that the other madahib are more easier, more lenient in this view than the Hanafis. Su'ru kalbi najasun yaghsilu min ina saban. The leftover dog is this are now the hukm of the dog drinking from a container. The leftover is najas, and the container should be washed 7 times. Imam Malik narrated from Zinad and who narrated from A'raj, who narrated from Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if a dog drinks from your containers, then wash it 7 times, and one of those should be with soil, with dust, soil or sand should be used. One of the 7 should be dust. There's a big discussion around this. Is it there's many riwayat. Is it a 7th is an extra? The sand is an extra one, or to use soap in its place as well. Something that will help with the cleaning. Put it that way. So in this case, of course, the hadith mentions soil. And upon this is the majority of people knowledge. Imam Shafi Rahimahullah said that if a dog drinks, or if its like mouth touches where it becomes wet, then it's wajib to wash it 7 times, and one of those should be with soil. And upon this, the analogy is used. Qiyas is done on khinzir, because khinzir's filth is even worse than a dog. So based on this, analogy is used that also the same should apply to that as well. Because at least dogs were even kept like for hunting or for security and so forth, for useful purposes, guard dogs, which is permissible, but the pig doesn't even have that use either. So therefore it's more emphasized in the khanzir. Imam Hanifa Rahimahullah's view was that there was no number as long as a najasa. It should be treated like any other najasa. Just maybe one more. I will stop there, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us understanding and tawfiq to practice. Ilm is something, knowledge of deen is something. I was reading something, Imam Sarakhsi, the other day, that why Islamic knowledge is different to all other sciences. And Imam Sarakhsi in his book, a great Imam of the past, is saying that knowledge is learned to practice, ilm of deen. And he's talking at a very high level, teaching usul of fiqh. It's an intermediate or advanced level usul of fiqh, the principles or the legal theory book. But at the beginning he says something. He said that knowledge is learned that we understand where our deen comes from, the proofs, the fundamentals of our deen, the sources of it. Then the system of the fuqaha have, like I was listening to a discussion, it's like 2-3 hours long, is like in an amr, sorry, not one, it was maybe 5-6 hours discussion on what is amr in fiqh. What is an order, command? Does an order, there's a difference among the imams, does it necessitate repetition? Aqimus salat is one salat or many salats? There's a whole discussion. When the order of salat is given, is it just, if you pray one salat, haven't you fulfilled the order? And why the ulama say, there's the discussions among the imams, how they look at it when it comes to applying for 5 times salat and so forth. So he said that we learn and try to understand the system behind it, and then with the goal that we can practice for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Which is something and so now we have a thing coming up where non-Muslims who become expert, they do PhDs on Islam. This is happening for a little while now, and they say we're an Islamic scholar. For us, no, it's impossible. You're not an Islamic scholar. You may have learned about history, you may have learned about rulings, but for us, we can never take you as a guide. You're not even Muslim. It doesn't even make sense. Like, we don't consider you an Islamic scholar. You may be a PhD about Islam or the history of Islam or ruling and so forth. And they're much more intelligent, educated than us actually sometimes. And they know Arabic better than us, and they know, many things. But they're not alim in the sense of, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, innama yakhshallah min ibadil ulama. that the true effect of knowledge in a person is khashya, fear of Allah comes. That's a real sign ilm is affected the heart. That's what Rasulullah ﷺ said, ilm is two types. Ilm that's on the tongue and ilm that's in the heart. So it's not just about accumulating information. We should be affected deeply and profoundly by that knowledge, the words of Allah and the words of Rasulullah ﷺ. That's the source of our knowledge. It should have an impact on us. If it's just on the tongue, then this is, as Rasulullah ﷺ said, is a proof against the son of Adam. It's actually information against him now. It's a proof against him. He knows and he doesn't practice. And that which affects the heart then is beneficial. Ilm nafi' in our deen is called ilm nafi', beneficial knowledge that will inspire the heart, affect the heart. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala let these words inshallah affect and may give us understanding. And upon this, Shah Waliullah, when he wrote this book, he wanted to put something before the ummah. He said, Kathur al-ikhtilaf, because Kathur al-ikhtilaf, in his time, 300, 250, ikhtilaf is too much amongst the fuqaha, amongst the ulama. So he wanted to find a way, explain fiqh through the hadith of Imam Malik's Muwatta in a way that diminishes that ikhtilaf. So sometimes I'm explaining masala, I said this and that. This is something normal. It's an academic difference. Yes, you'll be Hanafi, Shafi'i, whatever you study with your teachers, it's fine. They're all correct. But like we have to know sort of the landscape a little bit, and ikhtilaf went back to some Sahaba radiallahu anhum as well on issues of fiqh. So we should know the parameters. And if there's ikhtilaf, the best thing to do always, and this is the rule for the ulama Rabbaniyun, they have this rule, khuruj min khilaf mustahabbun. Exiting from the khilaf is mustahab, is rewarded. Because that's in line with the hadith. There's things that are halal, clear cut. There are things that are haram, clear cut. Then there's like things in the middle, you can say is the grey area. If you want to save your deen and akhirah, then you stay away from that. So you had imams in the past, like Shaykh Abdul Qadir Jilani, their rule was to practice the most strictest possible of all the madahib, to avoid any possibility of falling into. So if you, like for example, in the Hanafi mazhab, if you make wudhu, is 1/4 is the minimum. Based on the hadith of Nasir, the 1/4 is the minimum. In Shafi is 3 hairs. Right. But if you did the whole head, and Imam Malik and Imam Ahmad is the whole head. But if you wiped your whole head, you've covered all 4 madahib, isn't it? Isn't it? It covers the 1/3 and it covers the 3 hairs as well. As an example. So it's, you can go for the bare minimum in one, but if you actually cover all, the ikhtilaf, this takes you out of ikhtilaf. This takes you out of ikhtilaf. So for example, in ihram, I was explaining to the group, now if you start explaining all the details, some in the shoes for ihram. So in one madhab it says that you can cover the toes, right? But you don't have to cover the top, right? Another one said you can cover the heel, but you can't cover the, so, but if you wear flip-flops, Hawaii chappal, Hawaii chappal, isn't it? It's called Hawaii chappal. Thongs, flip-flops. Yeah. If you wear flip-flops, then you go out of all the madahib, all the ikhtilaf. So I'm saying, like I said, just avoid all of it. So that's why I encourage them to just do this way. I said you can buy good quality ones for $50, $100 chappals as well. Like nice one with very good sole and so forth from Vasilis. There's different brand names if you have foot problems. But if you wear the flip-flops, what do you call the flip-flop in the Arabic? Thongs. Thongs? No, thongs, flip-flops. Thongs in Australia, for those who are not from Australia, means flip-flops. I don't know what you call them in Arabic. Huh? Shib. Egyptian. This is Egyptian? Now a new word we can add to vocabulary. Shib. So make sure, this will take you out of the ikhtilaf of all the madahib. So this is one way. Now we're going to talk about shib for the next 10 minutes. Yeah, mashallah. Muhammad's saying they use it as a weapon sometimes. So, yeah, in many of our cultures, alhamdulillah, parents have used it. So anyway, what I'm saying, this is a rule to remember. You can actually, instead of going for the lowest common denominator or trying to find the shortest, actually, if you cover it, it's rewarded because you're protecting your deen and covering all your bases. Like we cover all the madahib. Inshallah. So that's one. You can look at the bare minimum, which in extreme situation is maybe looked at to make sure that we do the right thing, and maybe it's difficult to actually cover all, but at least where we can, we try. Inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us understanding and tawfiq to practice what we say in here. Subhanallah bihamdi, subhanakallah bihamdika.